The reason they like reading my stuff is that I've always got real life examples to prove what I'm saying.
There's a lot of good people that listen to this podcast.
Other than God and my family, deer hunting would be next in line on my list of priorities.
From the bottom of our hearts, it's just fantastic and awesome to have the support that you guys are getting.
People ask me about expandable broadheads and love swings.
Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Well, hey everyone, this is Terry Peer and Don Higgins with the Chasing Giants podcast, episode 114, brought to you by Osseo Gear. Don, consulting season is kind of officially over, and we are in Chasing Giants deer prep mode.
Yeah, I wrapped up this week in Indiana and Ohio. I've still got possibly one or two local to do for some non-resident landowners when they come turkey hunting. Just have to see how it works out, what the conditions are when they get here. If it's too green, the woods is growed up, we're going to postpone it. But
for the most part, you're done sleeping in hotels and eating at Waffle House, aren't you?
Yep. Hopefully. I've seen enough motels for a while.
Yeah, you've been hitting it really hard. So, after last week's episode, we started talking about kind of each of us have our kind of checklist of different things. Both of us kind of tackled quite a bit this week. Why don't we just start off the episode tonight by talking about what you tried to get done on your farm after returning from your consulting gigs?
Well, I'm still trying to get all my trail cameras gathered up. I think right now I've only got 3 left out in the woods, so I'll hopefully get those gathered up in the next week or so. Today
I got a quick question about that.
Okay.
Are you still using just a spreadsheet for your camera locations, or are you actually pinning them on a map now?
I'm just using a spreadsheet.
So
I'm afraid somebody will hack my computer and get my pinned locations on my. I was doing that for a while, and I got to thinking, if this gets in the wrong hands, somebody could make off with a bunch of high-dollar cameras here and also know where I'm hunting. So
if the Russians hack your computer, they could sell that information to the highest bidder. So when you're keeping your spreadsheet about what where your cameras are, I think if I remember right, you're also saving when you change the batteries and last change the card also, so you can kind of keep track of it that way. Is that right?
Yeah, and the interesting thing, the camera I pulled today, the last time it had been checked was October 19th. So it had been 6 full months since I'd been there. And,
any good ones on it?
Not really. To be honest, I bet the biggest one was under 140 inches. It's just a little out of the way. And that's the reason it's been out there so long. It's a little out of the way place, that it's not easy to get to, and I don't get there much. But it's the kind of place where a big one could show up. And if he does, I'll be all over it. So I've just got a lot of places like that. And that's why it takes me so long to get them all gathered up. It's this one, if I had to walk, it would be about a 3/4 mile walk across a mud field. But today it was dry enough that I was able to drive back there and get it, which is why it's been out there so long. But starting to get them all pulled in.
Outside of pulling your cameras, what else did you get into this week?
Well, I've got I had some fruit orchards on my farm that was getting growed up a little bit with some volunteer trees, some box elder, honey locust, things like that. And I've been clearing those to allow those fruit trees to get more sunlight and have less competition. So I finished that up today, and now all my orchards, and I've got 4 orchards on my property, if you will, just areas where I've got these fruit trees, and I've got them all cleared now, so that those trees ought to be able to really branch out and fill out this year.
When we're walking around your farm on the master classes, the several of those orchards are a great example of some of the articles and video data that you've put out over the years about how to make a good stand a great stand. And it's just applying just a little bit more diversity, or I guess a tactic to kind of funnel deer. And in one of your cases of your orchard, it's strategically put to kind of get the deer to pass by in that case, a 360 blind at a certain spot. So there's a lot of strategy that goes in also to how and where you put these trees, not just the variety.
Yeah, we actually got a question on that later in this podcast, Terry. But the orchard that you're referring to, it was actually one of them that I cleaned out today. And also, years ago when I first planted those trees, I put wire cages around them, to protect them from the
Right.
deer. And now they're big enough that today I took those wire cages off, pulled the steel T-post around them, and you know, trimmed back the brush and got them ready to really thrive now.
All right. So what's the ground situation up there? Is it still really wet? What's the row crop farmers around you doing? I know a lot of people are getting the itch to get in the field.
Yeah, today was the first day that they was in the field, and I'm telling you what, they was going hot and heavy. I couldn't believe this evening. Robin and I went to town for supper, and I couldn't believe all the corn that was planted in one day, because yesterday there was nobody out, and actually this morning early, it was raining and just a little bit, and then that rain quit and the wind picked up and dried everything out in a hurry, and boom, the farmers are coming out of the woodwork. I mean, they must have been sitting in the cabs of their tractors just waiting to turn the ignition on and head for the field, because there was a lot of corn planted today in Illinois.
Yeah, it's the farmers, especially if you watch, some of the big YouTube channels like Larson Farms or Millennial Farmer or Welker Farms. They have such a short window. They're raising so many acres, and to get the maturity and get that they want and get the yield that they want, they got to get it in and get it out, and the window is just so small. That's why they use this huge equipment. And I think that almost sets the wrong tone for food plotters, because they see that and they get a little bit itchy and sometimes make bad decisions. And Dwayne Hopkins, our seedsman from Kitchen Seeds, always one that says, read the conditions, not the calendar.
Yeah, and the other thing that you got to keep in mind is that these farmers are going to harvest that crop in the fall, and they need to harvest it before bad weather sets in the fall. So that's why one of the reasons they're so anxious to get their crop in early. A food plotter doesn't have to worry about that in the fall. We're putting it out and we're leaving it.
Right.
So we don't need to be in near the hurry that the farmers are. But we're starting to. I mean, we're well past when the farmers in this area are typically planting.
Right.
And it's supposed to rain tonight and tomorrow, which is going to shut them down again. So they was going hot and heavy today, like I've probably never seen before. I couldn't believe how many fields got worked in one day.
Well, for the most part of the Midwest and everybody, the food plotter side, you got plenty of time. Corn still got plenty of time. You can plant beans. We prefer to have them done by the end of June, but plenty of time to get those in. But you're reading the conditions, not the calendar. So just make sure you're making smart decisions. Hopefully, in your case, you don't have to replant your bottom plot 5 times this year from the creek getting out of the bank like you did last year.
Well, I hope not. You never know, though. I had an issue with a couple of volunteer trees that were catching a lot of debris, and that was
really?
flooding out that field. So last weekend, one of the projects my son-in-law Corey and I worked on was we cleaned up that mess in the creek so that it's not damming up the water, and making it go out into that plot. Now, that doesn't mean with a big rain it's not still going to,
Right.
but we've definitely got it flowing better than it was.
Well, that's good. So what else did you get cooking on besides trimming those orchard trees when you got back?
Well, I've been working on the plans for the last couple or few properties that I looked at this week, but I know you made it to my neck of the woods on a very fast trip, and I seen today on social media that you was turning over some dirt.
Yeah, Friday night, well, no, Thursday night. It was people have no idea how crazy our schedules are. And you basically, we don't have windows of days, we have windows of hours. And I decided to buy a tractor. You had a really good experience with a team of people at Sloan Implement, no affiliation with them whatsoever, but you had bought some equipment from them recently and got a nice thank you letter. And I decided I was going to upgrade from a subcompact to, I really wanted kind of a 4 series. But you're one of the guys that kind of sent you a thank you note and was kind of a personal touch. Called you, or you were calling him while we were in the truck one day, and I asked him to shoot me a price on something. And I have John Deere dealers around me, but the ones that are down here, they've been bought and sold 3 or 4 times since I've bought my last piece of equipment, and that's only been 7 years ago. So through Ethan Fitzwilliam at Sloan in Effingham, Illinois, I can't ask for better service, and he walked me through. So needless to say, I bought a tractor 4.5 hours away from where I live, and our good mutual friend and one of your land consultant clients, Todd Covey, let me borrow his gooseneck to come up, and the only window I had to come get this thing was Thursday night, early Friday morning, because my wife is out of town this weekend. So I had to be back Friday midday before she left, so for the kids. So I was talking to Ethan about it, and this guy and his wife met me at the John Deere dealership at 9:30 at night to deliver my tractor. We did all the paperwork via email, but he showed up over at the dealership and walked me through everything, helped me load it. And stupid me, I don't haul equipment every day. I didn't check the tires before we loaded up that tractor and boomed it down. And one last sanity check around the trailer before I pulled off. One of the inside duals was flat after we got it completely loaded. And Ethan was there with his wife, Kaylin, and I think I ruined their night because without even questioning it, he went back over and raised the service shed door up, rolled out a jack, and helped me change that dual on the back of that tractor. I'm just glad it didn't happen out on the interstate. We found it there versus having a catastrophe or an accident or something. But when you talk about a young man who basically went completely above and beyond, I will drive 4.5, 5 hours for that kind of service any day of the week. There's not many young men that are that conscious of trying to help somebody. And like I said, he didn't have to go over late that night. He didn't have to stay and help me change that tire, but that kind of stuff goes a long way with me. It's like dealing with people like Chris Yates and Joe Miles. That's who we want to do business with, is the people that kind of stand behind their stuff like that.
Yeah, as a testament to how busy you and I are, you stayed at my house that night and I did not even see you. Yeah, I waited up till 10 o'clock and you didn't show. And it's like, man, I'm beat. I'm going to bed and I'll see him in the morning. Well, I get up in the morning and you're already gone.
Yeah, I rolled
So you
in.
stayed at my place and I didn't even see you.
I think I got to your house at around midnight, and I was back on the road about just a couple minutes after 5. I had to get back to the office for an 11 o'clock meeting, so everything went fine. But yeah, I ended up buying a 5065E, 67 horsepower cab John Deere. Ethan walked me through a couple decisions on it. But yeah, I worked ground today. I posted a couple pictures on social media, and I'm already getting blasted for using a moldboard plow on my ground. So there's a lot of people that have opinions in life, and that's okay, I guess. But we're kind of forced into doing things certain ways because of our soil conditions, and the fields that I was in today are extremely heavy clay. So I had winter wheat in about 7, maybe 8 acres. So we turned that weed over today and let it set for a couple weeks, and then I'll disc it and get some corn and beans planted. But people don't understand that different areas of the country. Yeah, if I could no-till that, trust me, I'd love to save the diesel fuel and the bouncing around in a tractor and the hours on a brand new piece of equipment. But our soil, if you take it and ball it up like a snowball and throw it, you can play baseball with it. That's how hard and compacted it gets. So if we don't bust it up every year, it ends up being like an asphalt parking lot. So, but I'm excited. I rode around that field for several hours today, and my mind's, just racing about different things to do in the fields with combinations of different product and setting up different. We're actually terminating one bedding area and putting in another bedding area last year. So I'm trying to change a little bit about where the deer are bedding. So with predominant wind, so there is a complete overhaul and remodel on my farm this year. So we'll be showing some probably drone pictures and aerials as it gets. But the one thing that I haven't even talked to you about is this morning when I left the house, I had the tractor loaded up on the gooseneck with the plows on it last night to go over and plow my mother-in-law's garden. She raises a really big garden. Well, not too far away from my mother-in-law's house, I actually got pictures of a decent buck last year. And I think he's actually bedding inside of city limits. So while I had the tractor in town, I drove down the road and actually plowed in a food plot behind a big pole barn. So I don't know if he'll turn into anything this year, but it's one of those things like we talk about on this podcast. There's a chance that this buck could be something really special in the next year or two. And I don't want to wait till August when I get his picture to decide that I'm ready to hunt him. So we're putting a plan in on an urban buck, and maybe he'll be something to target this year.
Oh, I hope so. That'll be a good story.
So I don't know. Have you ever chased an urban one? I haven't. So
no, not really.
So it's, our people got to realize our entire county has like 5 stoplights in it. It's not a, so when we say it's in city limits, it's very small towns, but big connecting woods that come into the back of a subdivision and then ag on the south end of it. And I got a pretty good, he's a good one. So like I said, while I had the tractor up there, went in and we plowed up a food plot in an old hayfield. So it's going to be a spot that I can slip in really easy and hunt in early season if he ends up being a shooter.
Well, I hope he does. Is that the best one that you've got, you think, or you got even more?
No, but he's got some character already on a frame. The frame's not real big. I got bucks with bigger frames on them, but he's got some junk starting. So he could be something interesting, you don't know. So it's one thing that we talk about on this podcast all the time is you can't wait till you get a picture of a shooter to have a plan in place. It makes it so much tougher. So especially here in Kentucky, when we have early season in September, if he's a shooter and I got food, the chances of getting close to him is a whole lot easier the first couple of weeks of September and while he's still in a bachelor group.
Yep.
So, well, I want you to tee up a little bit for all of our listeners before we move on to questions about a new series or discussion you're going to start next week about some of the properties that you looked at last year. Or this year.
Yeah, this winter there's 4 properties. As I was driving home this week from my last consulting visit, I was thinking about all the properties that I'd walked this year, and there's 4 of them that really stood out, and we're going to talk about them next week. This week, what I want to talk about is some of the takeaways from this year. Some of the things that I see on a regular basis, almost daily, as I visit these properties. And probably right out of the gate, number one is I got to comment on the people that I meet, because every day, every stop, I make new friends, and these
Right.
people just treat me so good. They roll out the red carpet. They feed me. They offer me places to stay for the night. As we're walking, I mean, I just get treated like royalty, and um, yeah, I think I've got the best job on the planet, and it starts with the people that I'm dealing with every day. Just great people. Some of the things that I see every day, I think, a couple of, I don't know if you want to call them negatives, but a couple of the things, the issues that I think hold people back from success. One of them is when we talk about zero human intrusion into a sanctuary area. Most people don't understand what zero means. And when we say zero, we mean you don't go in.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And that's really important at the beginning when you're trying to develop your property. That's when it's the most important, because you're trying to build the idea in the minds of the local deer herd, if you will, that this is the safest place in the neighborhood. And if you're going in there just once or twice a year, that can be enough that, to change that. And I say for about the first 10 years or so, when you're building a sanctuary, you really need to have zero human intrusion, no mushroom hunting, no turkey hunting, zero. And that just is a concept that is so hard for a lot of people to accept. Another thing that I see on a fairly regular basis is that folks just don't understand, and it goes right along with the human intrusion that we just talked about in the sanctuary, is that they just want to have too many hunters on their property for the goal they got. Now, I'm not saying there's such thing as too many hunters, but too many hunters for the goal. If your goal is to kill the biggest bucks you possibly can, every hunter that you bring on that property decreases your odds of that happening. And we discussed that the last couple of weeks in a couple of questions that we had submitted. But, on a fairly regular basis, I would visit a property that had multiple hunters hunting a fairly small property. And I'm not talking 40 acres, but I'm talking, maybe 120 acres with 3 or 4 guys on it. Well, you know, sure, we can improve things. We can make it better than it was, but you're going to have to temper your goals too. So that's one that,
Well,
I see.
I think every property has a ceiling, if that makes sense. And that ceiling is going to be different for each property. But if you want to maximize that property, there's things you can do, to keep
Right.
raising that ceiling. And it's like your buddy Al Foster said, it takes time to keep gradually raising that ceiling. You've done that on your home farm year after year after year for 30 years. But I think the lack of understanding human intrusion, too many hunters, you're going to keep pulling that ceiling down because just the age structure is not going to be what you want. People don't understand it. They want the quick fix and have everything, and you can't.
Mm-hmm. And I think most of them realize that it's not going to be instant. It's going to take some time, but it also takes changing the way you do some things sometimes. But, on a positive note, I'm seeing, and I've been consulting for several years now. And one of the changes that I've seen is today I see more people that are doing a lot of things right.
Good.
I can think of a lot of properties I visited this year where, guys were watching the wind, they were watching their access. They had sizable sanctuaries, um, just doing a lot of things right. Um, so I am seeing, as a general, broad overview of the whole season, there's a lot more right being done on these properties than I would have seen, say, 5 to 10 years ago.
Well, that's good. It's we talk about making your property different. And I think everybody immediately takes that conversation to food plots or bedding, but it's also how you hunt that property. That's just as important of how to make your property different, your checkerboard square different than all around us. Because let's face it, every single hunter around here in Kentucky, when they park their truck, they got to walk to the back property line. It never fails. Everybody always wants to walk through their entire property to set on the back property line for some reason. And, I'm getting further and further. The more I understand how the neighbors are hunting, that's just as important for me to set my property up, knowing what they're doing to try to improve my odds of what I need to do on mine.
And that's something I see almost daily as I walk these properties. And I typically start by walking the perimeter and getting an idea of hunting pressure and how hunting pressure on neighboring properties and how it might affect that property. And everybody, it seems, they want to walk clear through their property to the very back property line. And when they do, what are they doing? They're pushing them deer. They're pushing them deer ahead of them. They're pushing them onto the property that a lot of times that I'm consulting on. And sometimes my clients are doing the same thing. They're going right through everything, clear to the back of the property. And, I tell them, hey, let's let the neighbors push them deer in from all directions onto the property. Once them deer get here, let's give them a safe sanctuary where they never encounter human intrusion. And then let's use food to create some huntable travel patterns so we can kill those bucks once we get them staying here.
Yep.
Yeah, that's just another thing I see, quite a bit. But.
Yep. So next week we're going to actually, are you going to be able to put aerials up of each of these properties and talk about them, or just visualize them, or talk about them?
We're just going to have to talk about them. These guys, and I don't blame them. They don't want their property stuck up on a screen for, 25,000 people to see and know what they're doing and what the plan is. But there's some commonalities between all these properties. And the thing of it is, here's what's really interesting, Terry. These 4 properties that I picked out as the 4 top, they come from 4 different states. And probably some of those states are not where you would expect. And I'm going to explain why I think they are a top property.
Osseo Gear introduces a premium line of bow hunting gear that is unmatched, pairing nature's finest camouflage with the best technological innovations. Osseo Gear brings whitetail bow hunters the gear they need to be the best at their craft. The unique camouflage mimics the intricate feather pattern of North America's greatest predatory creatures. Designed for invisibility, built for comfort, and engineered for function. Visit OsseoGear.com. That's ASIO Gear.com to start shopping. Osseo Gear. Prepare to be invisible.
All right, Don. Well, with that, we're going to move on to our first question of the week tonight. I'm going to share my screen and have you read this first question from Bruce Williams.
Yeah, Bruce is from Highland, Illinois, and he says, did you find with your captive does that the doe fawns would come into estrus around the same time as their mothers each year because their cycles sync up like with human females? I sincerely appreciate your faith and common sense approach to this great country's heartbreaking situation. Well, Bruce, we've talked about this a couple times in the past on the podcast, but doe fawns will enter their first estrus cycle when they reach about 80 pounds. It's got nothing to do with the time of the year. I believe that probably more doe fawns get bred in January than any other month. But I also know that a lot of them get bred in February and even March and later. But it's all based on their body weight and nothing to do with their mothers.
So when we hear the stories about a third rut or late rut, or you see deer still chasing, most likely that is a doe that has come into season. I think this is another, boy, I'm going to get off on a tangent here, and you can tell me that I'm out of whack, but I've never come out and said this on the podcast. I think a complete nutrition program, especially in the late season after ag has been picked, is especially vital for our doe fawns getting weight earlier in the year. It's not a good thing for that doe fawn to be bred in February, because that's going to get behind the cycle. It's going to be, that fawn's going to be dropped a whole lot later than the normal cycle of older does. So when it comes to nutrition, this is just another kind of pivotal part that we don't ever talk a lot about in providing especially protein that's going to add weight as we get into November, December, to try to get your first year doe fawns up to weight to come into cycle earlier.
Yeah, we could even take this in the direction of those dreaded doe factories, Terry. I promote year-round nutrition at the highest level you can possibly provide, and even in the summer. If you've got the best habitat on your property, you're probably going to have multiple does raising their fawns on your farm, and we need to be feeding them, just like you say.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a matter of keeping weight up in does and fawns, and even bucks. The more that a buck comes out of the rut, they've run like crazy, they've dropped weight. The faster we can get their muscle mass built back up and recovered, the more energy of nutrition goes into those antlers as this time of year, versus still recovering from a hard winter where there hasn't been anything to eat and they've been eating rocks and sticks all winter.
Right. Yeah, nutrition is very important.
If you listen to many of our podcasts, you know that minimizing human intrusion is the key to our success. Don Higgins and I have been utilizing the Quiet Cat bike for many years now. As shed season is here, turkey season is not far away. There's no better choice to navigate around your property than a Quiet Cat bike. Go visit Quiet Cat and use the word Higgins to get a free trailer with any Quiet Cat electric bike purchase.
Tyler's from Florence, Wisconsin. He says, "Dear Don and Terry, first off, I would like to say I love the podcast. Thanks for all you're doing and keeping it real in not such a real world these days. I would love to hear more about your day-to-day operations on your farms, even though I'm in northern Wisconsin. When I hear you talking about what you are doing on your farm, it prepares me for what is coming in the weeks on my land. I find that extremely beneficial." Well, we tried to do that tonight, Tyler, and we will continue to do that. Update on what we're doing as we're doing it, so that you can prepare. Tyler goes on to say, "One question I have for you is when planting trees, such as 10 or more apple trees, why do you pick that specific spot? To clarify, I'm thinking about looking at this at the 40-acre property. Why one corner or the other? I have a creek running from corner to corner diagonally southwest to northeast, and an ag field on the southern border owned by the neighbor. Thanks so much, and I'm definitely looking forward to the raffle that you guys are having with your church." Well, Tyler, planting trees on a property, first of all, you need a good site. You need a site where those trees are going to get plenty of sunlight, where they're not being crowded by other trees. Give them plenty of space. And with that in mind, I'm always looking for 2 locations for planting these trees. I talked about earlier that I was out today pruning around some of my orchards. All the orchards on my farm, all the orchards on the plans I put together are one of 2 places. They're either right next to a food plot, so we can diversify food sources. You've got not only the food plot, but you'll have those fruit trees around the edge to provide another food source at that location. If it's not right at a major feeding area, a food plot, I should probably refer to these as feeding areas on my farm instead of food plots, because there's usually multiple food sources there. If they're not in a feeding area, then they are very close to a tree stand. I'm trying to enhance a stand location with maybe 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 fruit trees, mass trees such as chestnuts or whatever. But I'm either trying to use those trees to draw them to the feeding area or to draw them closer to a stand site.
I saw a property probably about a month ago where someone had gone in and spent a ton of money on fruit trees to basically make their orchard. on their property, trying to develop, a great diverse food source, but they had to basically walk through it to get to their tree stand. And, so make sure that your position of this or location of this on your property is not going to be where you're walking through it to get in and out. You still need to treat it as a food plot, not where something you're going to be bumping deer out, because during certain times of the year, they're going to be in there hammering that food.
Yeah, there's been more than one property I've walked this winter where there was fruit tree plantings that as part of the plan, I had the client moving those trees. It's no fun to have to dig up the trees you planted 2 or 3 years ago and move them. But I mean, it can be done easy enough. It's just a good bit of work. Well, do it right the first time, and you don't have to move them. But
all right. Well, let's take a quick break and talk about Lester's feet for a little bit. The raffle video, I'm going to take just a quick break and play that right now for everyone. Please share this video. It's on everybody's social media. And we want to thank not only Larson Farms, but also Fall Line Ridge YouTube channels. They're also sharing it. But as many tickets that we can sell, all of this money goes back to help a family, and I'm going to give you 2 updates after this video.
The Lester's Feet Foundation is a 100% volunteer, nonprofit organization whose sole mission is to help families with sick children. The impact on families who have children with life-altering illnesses can be devastating and often requires one or both parents to be away from work. Through our fundraising efforts and the help of our generous donors, Lester's Feet works with families to help alleviate the financial burdens associated with caring for their children through such a challenging time. 100% of donations and fundraising profits go directly to the families we are supporting. We are excited to announce that Solid Rock Chapel in Sullivan, Illinois is supporting our foundation by hosting a huge raffle with $150,000 worth of prizes, including a new Chevy truck, a John Deere tractor, a material kit to a post frame building, and much more. The drawing will be on July 4th, 2022, so please visit us at www.lestersfeetfoundation.org to purchase your raffle tickets and learn more about our organization.
Again, please help share the word. There's people like Midwest Land Group, Victory Chevrolet, and others that have donated thousands and thousands of dollars to encourage people to buy these tickets when they could have just written a check as a donation. The strategy here is you put big prizes up instead of the donation to multiply that as far as getting more money for families. So please, I know that. I know that everybody says there's plenty of time to do this, but remember, we are also a volunteer organization, so it's really hard to process all of these tickets the week before we close the raffle. So not only is it appreciated, but it really helps us navigate when last year, the amount of tickets that we sold in the last week was a blessing, but we're not set up like a big organization to handle all of this. So buying your tickets early is a big help to us. I'm going to share a picture on the screen right now of baby Waylon. For those of you on TikTok, I guess this is one of the most popular I'm not on TikTok, but this is one of the most popular TikTok channels is Way Baby. This is the little premature baby with dwarfism that is from Kentucky. They moved him down to Nashville to Vanderbilt, and the family didn't have a place to stay, so Lester's Feet helped keep him there. It's a cool story, Don. 7 months old, and his grandmothers got to meet him for the first time today. Wow. So this picture up on the screen right now was, through COVID and being in ICU, baby Waylon is still in the hospital, but the grandmas were able to go finally meet their grandson in person today. But just such a special day. And the family is just such an awesome family. I didn't realize this till the other day, but Waylon's aunt, I'm going to get this wrong. Yes, Waylon's aunt actually has it's not an organization, but she gets old wedding dresses from ladies after they've gotten married that they don't want their wedding dress anymore, and she actually makes angel dresses out of them. So she cuts them up and makes them into small dresses for families who lose their baby girl and have a dress for the funeral. So
Wow.
she repurposes. So my wife actually approached me this week and asked me if it was okay if she got rid of her wedding dress, and I told her as long as this is what she was doing, I had no problem with it. But special family that God kind of connected us with. So and then I want to share a quick story and prayer request for a family in Phoenix that I'm going to leave nameless. They're outside of Phoenix, Arizona, and this is just an example of, our foundation is kind of set up and specializes in helping families with sick kids while they're unable to work. But we have a way that in cases where we need to step in and help a family that needs it, we can, per our bylaws. And we were connected with a family that has a child with cystic fibrosis out in Arizona. They were living with their mother, being a caregiver for the mother. And unfortunately, the mother, now grandmother of the kid with cystic fibrosis, she passed away in January. And the property that they were living in was actually rented in her name. So after she passed away, because of the escalating housing market, the landlord sold the property out from underneath of the family with cystic fibrosis, so that they became homeless. Unfortunately, the housing market has escalated so high. The family, both parents work. The mother works 2 jobs. The deposits for finding a place are just insane. And we learned about this family and got them in a home to take care of their child. So in this case, it really, for people who want to know how Lester's Feet works, we review every case, kind of as an independent conversation. And there's times that we have to navigate and just do the right Christian thing. And in this case, this family wanted to work, but they had to take care of this child with serious cystic fibrosis. Is a very serious condition. And but because of the donors that chipped in and have donated, we were able to get this family off the street and get them in a rental place, even and so they could take care of that child. So thank you for everyone. Again, if you can share this raffle, buy tickets. That's the best thing that you can do right now to get this money to the families that need it. So with that, let's move to question number 3. I'll put that up on the screen. Hopefully it's thinking. There we go. Okay, so I have question number 3 up on the board for tonight.
All right. Question number 3 comes from Jesse Vandenberg from Polk City, Iowa. Jesse says, "Hey, Don and Terry, thanks for the great podcast and all the intel you give all of us. Also, thanks for all you do for people all around. Question is for Don. Don, with all your successes and being a hunter like all of us, I'm sure you've come across from mishaps. Have you ever had a target buck pegged and missed the shot, and then you get another shot at them? Or have you had your target buck patterned and went out on the day you thought you could kill him and have him bust you to never return? Thanks again, and good luck this coming season." Well, Jesse, as I look back over 45 years of deer hunting, I can think of one buck, one situation that still haunts me to this day and probably always will. It would have been back in probably the late 1980s, would be my guess. There was a buck that I called the Cedar House buck. The first time I seen this buck, I was in a stand hunting, and on the property that I was hunting on, there was a house with cedar siding. And so I'm behind this cedar sided house, in my stand, and from across open country, I mean, it was wide open for miles in one direction, clear to the next town. And from that direction, as I'm sitting in my stand, 2 hours before dark, across this open country comes this giant buck. And I'm sure what happened is he got busted out of his bed somehow by somebody doing something. It was on a Sunday afternoon. I remember the details like it happened yesterday. And he's cutting across this wide open country. He's not coming right to me, but he's coming within about 70, 80 yards of my stand. And he was looking for some cover to hide in. And I tried to grunt at him, if I remember right, and he didn't even turn his head. He just kept going right for the cover. He'd been busted. He ran across that, but I'm telling you what, this deer had a frame on him. Huge, huge. He was a clean 10-pointer,
Huge.
but I'm telling you, he was huge to the next degree. I'm telling you, unbelievable.
Donald Trump, huge.
He was that big. Well, actually the day I seen him was the Sunday after Thanksgiving. And I was working a job at the time, and that was I always took the whole month of November off, and then I would have to go back to work the Monday after Thanksgiving. And that was my last hunt before I would go back to work the next day. And boy, that deer's that rack was burned in my mind. Well, the next year, this was before the days of trail cameras too. The next year, at that time, I was always having a group of hunters from Eastern Ohio that would come out and they'd hunt with me for a week, and then I would go to Ohio and hunt with them for a week in November. And that next fall, one of those guys from Ohio seen that deer, and this guy was just freaking out. It's like, yeah, this is world record. He was calling it world record. I don't know if it was world record, but I'm telling you, it was big. He was over 190 typical, and he may have been over 200 typical, but I'll say 190 for sure. Later that fall, it was in the rut. I was in a stand, and I was actually hunting for this deer, and I was between a bedding thicket and a farm field where these deer were coming out to feed, and kind of a hidden pocket back off. You couldn't be seen from the road, and a group of half a dozen or so does came out and fed in those in the corn stalks, because it was a harvested cornfield that year. And they came from one direction, and they came from my right, and to my left was another thicket bedding area. And that's what I was really hunting, because the deer would come out of that bedding area to my left, and they would come down and cross a creek, and then they would come out into that cornfield. And so that's where I was trying to catch them. But anyway, this half a dozen does came from the other direction. They're feeding out in this corn stubble, and the first buck comes out of that thicket to my left and goes out and chases them does around the corn stalks, grunting and stuff and making noise as they're running through them stalks and such. And that commotion caused the giant buck to get up out of that thicket, and he walked right to the edge of the thicket, right to the edge of the creek. He had to cross the creek and come up on the other bank before I could get a shot at him. And he stood there right at the edge of that bank, looking through the open timber, which was not that wide. It was probably 50 yards or so wide at that point. But he stood there watching this buck chase these does around this cornstalk field. Eventually, he did cross the creek and came up and gave me a 20-yard shot. By this time, it's getting dusk, and at that time, I was shooting instinctive, and I shot, and I thought I killed him. I thought I smoked that deer, and he took off running into the brush, and I waited probably, I don't know, at least a half hour and climbed down. I came back with a good friend of mine to look for the deer. We went to where my arrow should have been stuck in the ground, and we found my arrow. It wasn't stuck in the ground. It was laying on top of the ground with the broadhead pointed back at my tree stand. Ooh. So I think what happened is I deflected off of a tree branch, and that arrow hit that deer. It didn't hit him square, but it was an old snuffer, Rothar snuffer broadhead, and those things were welded at the right where it screws into the arrow, and I hit that deer hard enough to bust a weld on that broadhead, and as that blade, the weld broke and it sprung away, it came back and it caught deer hair. There was deer hair trapped under that weld as it sprung back, and there was just a little tip of blood. I mean, like a quarter inch on the very end of that broadhead. And I knew at that point that deer wasn't hurt whatsoever. I came back the next day to look just to make sure, but that is the one buck that still haunts me to this day. He might have been my first 200 if I'd have got him, but he if he wasn't, he was right there. Giant typical.
Well, segue into our next question. You made a post this week about a video with a expandable broadhead stuck into a shoulder, and you've gotten a bunch of people that disagree and a bunch of people who agree with you or have fessed up and said, yeah, I had this happen to me. And then our buddy Joe Miles chimed in a little bit, poking the bear a little bit. He's a big expandable fan. So I'm going to share the screen for our next question. You can read that, and then you can talk a little bit if you want about that post or the upcoming debate that we're going to do for fun with Joe.
Yeah. So the next question comes from John Petersheim from Elizabethville, Pennsylvania. John says, so I hear all your talk on the mechanical broadheads, and I just seen your post about it today, and I agree with you, but was wondering why you would consider doing a debate with Joe Miles about them. Love what you guys are doing. Keep it up. Well, John, first of all, I got people riled up for the last 2 days on this mechanical broadhead deal, and I guess I'm not allowed to have an opinion, Terry. Everybody else in the world can have an opinion, but I'm not even allowed on my own page to have an opinion. But anyway, so why would I?
Oh, that's funny. I never thought of it that way. Oh, that's funny. I got people blasting me about moldboard plowing right now, but yeah, that's a great way to spin at it. Everybody else can have an opinion, but we can't.
No, not even on your own page. I guess we should take a poll every time we're going to make a post to make sure we're not going to offend anybody. But anyway, why would I do it with Joe Miles? Well, first of all, I have a lot of respect for Joe Miles. I consider him a friend. We've got opposite opinions about it. I respect everyone. This is America. I respect everyone's opinion and their choice to use whatever they want. My whole, I've got nothing to gain on this whole broadhead debate because I don't have a broadhead sponsor. I'm not looking for a broadhead sponsor. I don't care what you shoot. I'm just trying to help people not lose deer, not wound and lose deer. And I just believe with all my heart that mechanical broadheads are a failure waiting to happen. They may work great for you the first 50 deer you shoot, but 51, and and people want to throw at me, well, the same thing can happen. Deer are lost with cut on contact heads, or they're even lost when they're shot with a gun. And I'll grant you that, but there are deer that are lost with mechanical heads simply because of the head. And I don't think that's the case with a cut on contact. Yeah, there's going to be deer lost. It's going to be lost because of a bad hit, but it's not lost because of the choice of head. And I'm not going to get into this too deep because I don't want Joe Miles to hear all my ammo I'm going to throw at him when we have our debate. But, the reason I want to do the debate with Joe is because I want a couple things. I know I'm not going to change his mind, and he's not going to change my mind. But I want people to see that just because someone is shooting a mechanical head does not mean I look down on them. I don't. I'm just trying to, in my opinion, I think there's a better way to do it, a way that's not going to cost you a deer in the future on a hit. So that's the whole reason why I would debate Joe.
The whole idea of a debate for this came up years ago, right after we started this podcast, and even somebody thought they were going to get I think T-Bone Turner actually, I don't know, somebody said that he had him to agree to it. By the way, for those of you who aren't following, keep T-Bone in your prayers. He's still recovering from his cancer in his leg. But anyway, that never worked out. And I think that was for the best, because now this shows, for all those people who think that we're just out there to bash people or what, Joe Miles is the primary sponsor of this podcast. And it just goes to show that two guys can have a difference of opinion and try to do something good for the outdoor community, which is, I think, what the goal of this is. And it's allowing people to hear unbiased differences of opinion to help educate themselves for the best decision for you. Same way with the great debate with Tony LaPratt. And when you get to the end of the story with you and Joe Miles, there's going to be much more that you guys fundamentally agree on that you disagree on. And Joe's been on the podcast several times. Great whitetail hunter, great outdoorsman. A lot of these guys go around with outfitters and just pop deer everywhere all across the country. Joe gets it done on his own for the most part, and he's shot deer everywhere. So I can't think of a better person that would be a better representation of the other side of the opinion on this. So that's why I think it's a good idea to do it. And let's face it, there's going to be a lot of laughs and some cutting up during this thing too.
Well, Joe is the perfect guy to debate this, and he is a well-respected whitetail hunter. That's he's hunted a lot more places than I have, and very successfully. But that one thing that this should prove to the listener is, here I am willing to take on like you said, Terry, our title sponsor, our primary sponsor. I'm willing to debate him on a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and we have totally opposite opinions. But just because of who he is, I'm not going to cut him any slack on the debate. He's not going to cut me any slack either.
There won't be any slack cut either way on this one, I don't.
But at the end of the day, we're still going to respect each other, and I hope he never loses a deer to the mechanical heads. I really do.
All right. Well, and at the end of the day, if it's just more content that helps people make the best decision for them, that's all we're about. Right. That's what this whole thing is about. So let's go on to our last question of the night from your home state of Illinois, it looks like.
Yeah, this comes from Ryan Hunsacker from Valmeyer, Illinois. He says, Don and Terry, first of all, thank you for using your platform to share the gospel and for the great podcast. My question is about planting food in shade. There's a small piece of standing timber that we have permission to hunt. It is only 100 yards wide and probably half a mile long. There is a chunk of wood to the south, but there is nothing to the north, so deer only move through occasionally. The landowner does not want us to cut down any trees or even branches, so it is all shaded. Is there anything that we could plant in the woods to possibly attract deer? I was thinking that planting oats might work. The closest that I can find a food plot for deer is 10 miles. So if I could get something planted in the woods, it would probably attract deer. Any advice that you could provide would be appreciated. Thanks. Well, Ryan, the reason that I selected your question for this podcast is we get this question all the time at Real World, and
more than even
Yeah. I know you answer most of the emails, so I know you see it more than I do, but I get it a lot. This is what sets Real World apart, I think, from other seed companies, is that we're going to give you the straight truth. We don't want to sell you a bag of seed and have it fail. And to be honest, there is nothing that's going to grow in the conditions you just described. Nothing. Don't waste your money buying something and planting it in the woods. All the time we hear about logging. What can I plant on a logging road? What can I plant in the woods that's shaded all the time? This and that. You mentioned oats. Well, oats will work to some degree in some situation, but typically until the leaves fall off the trees, they're not going to get enough sunlight to mount anything. Sure, you can throw oats out on a paved road and to get some rain on them, and they're going to sprout, but they're not going to mount anything. And it's the same way in the woods. I'm not going to try to sell you anything that's going to fail. And just about, it's the same way with these throw and grow mixes. What do you got as far as a throw and grow? That's another question we get all the time. Do you have anything that I can just throw? No, we don't. Oats again would be probably the closest thing because they just germinate so easily. But that's a situation, and the whole throw and grow idea was just basically a marketing gimmick to get people who do not have the ability or the means to plant a food plot to buy some seed. That they just want to sell you. They're selling you a hope and a dream, and they know it's not going to work.
It's
And we're
mostly
just not going to do that.
ryegrass. It's not even a forage. It's not cereal grain. It's ryegrass.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like the apple smell in a bucket of supposed mineral that's nothing but an attractant. It looks pretty for the person doing it. The bigger question I always go back to every person that asks this question is I said, can seed germinate without sunlight? No. Okay, so when would you have to plant this? In the fall after all the leaves fall. Okay, after all the leaves fall, how do you get seed onto the soil? Well, I have to blow it or rake it back. So what you're wanting to do right 2 weeks before deer season is go in and rake or leaf blow or mow the leaves back to get the seed to the dirt right before hunting season. You think that's a good idea? And I mean, it defeats the purpose of everything that we worked for keeping intrusion out and not pressuring a property. You're going to go in there with equipment or rakes and blow something back so you can grow something green that's not going to last. I always challenge everybody, if you're thinking about doing this, the only deviation to this is if there is open logging roads through a property that does get sunlight down, where it's literally a road where you could possibly put clover in those, because then you could drive over them and it'd still be okay. But I would challenge everybody that's thinking about, if I have a block of woods and I need to plant something in it, go over to the perimeter of that and find that ag field and talk to that farmer and figure out what herbicide or residual he's putting down, and offer to buy some seed for a cover crop and go in there and blow some oats out into the cornfield or bean field next to you, the property, and use that. You got a whole lot better chance of success than tromping up your woods trying to blow ryegrass on the ground.
Yeah. And again, we get this question so much. I thought it was a good time of the year to pull it out and use this question on the podcast.
Yeah, Dwayne Hopkins told me a long time ago, if you look at a tree, think of the root system underneath the ground as the same size diameter as what's above ground. So if you have this big tree in the woods, big canopy, you have those roots under the ground. Well, when you talk about a soil nutrition, it looks like black. It's really black dirt from the compost, from the leaves that fall. It looks like good dirt. The nutritional value in the woods is not very good because the tree sucks up every bit of moisture and nutrient that's in there. So even by planting something, you don't have really the nutrients to add the value into the plant. You need to come up with a different alternative.
Yeah, I mean,
you're wasting your money. I mean, do what you want, but you're wasting money.
Yep. Sorry for the bad news, but I just don't want to see you wasting your money.
Yep. Well, speaking of, Ryan talked about us sharing the gospel. You got a little bit of a road trip tomorrow. I think you're going to be a proud grandpa tomorrow, if I understand right.
Yeah, this was kind of sprung on me this week, and I wasn't even expecting it. But my youngest grandson, the one that that we'd been praying for, that had the issue with his hip and his leg earlier this year, and we thought he had Perthes disease, and I fully believe that our prayers were answered and he was healed. because he has absolutely no pain and hasn't for basically since about the time we started praying. And but anyway, he decided this week that he wants to get baptized. So tomorrow morning we're all going over to Indiana to their church, and we're gonna watch Walker get baptized.
That's fantastic news from a dad who's been able to watch his 3 children be saved and baptized. It's a big deal, and so I'm happy for Corey and Andrea, but also happy that you guys are going to be able to be there to help share that as a family. It'll be the best decision he ever makes, and the most important decision. And when you're called to do that, you got to answer that call. So I'm happy for that little boy and his decision, but also happy for the family. That's awesome. And please express our congratulations from all of us to the whole family when you see him tomorrow.
Will do.
So what we want to go through the checklist here of things that we need to do. What do we got cooking on your end this upcoming week before the next podcast?
Well, on Monday, Robin and I are going to the Real World headquarters for a giant miscanthus shipment. This miscanthus
the biggest
thing
of the year.
Yeah, what we filled a UPS semi last or Monday before. We ship every other Monday, and 16 pallets of boxes of miscanthus rhizomes went out, and this week's even bigger. So that's what we're doing Monday. Then, depending on the weather, I would like to get my corn planted here as soon as possible, but we got rain coming in next couple days, so I'm not sure I'm going to get that done. I've got just a little bit of tree stand work that I'd like to get done, and after that, it's pretty much food plots. I got where we burned off the switchgrass here by the house after that last master class. I went out and there were some weeds coming up. Half of that field, was already in a good stand of real world switchgrass, and the other half of the field was in other things that I'd originally planted.
Right.
I went out and I sprayed that field yesterday, and we're going to come in with Jay Gingrich Tree Farm is coming in and planting miscanthus for me in rows, and we're going to plant rows 8 feet apart, but we're only going to drop a rhizome about every 5 feet. So there's just going to be these random sprigs of miscanthus across this field. And as soon as he's done, then I'm going to go over that field and I'm going to no-till in real world switchgrass. So maybe I'll get that done this week. And that's going to be really interesting for the master class the next couple of years to see, that combination of miscanthus scattered throughout the switchgrass field. Because I have no doubt the deer, when they bed, they're going to bed right against those miscanthus clumps. It's just going to add a whole lot of structure. That's on my list for this week. But hopefully I can wrap up my tree stand work as well. But how about you, Terry?
That spot that I plowed up for the urban buck, we'll just call it the urban buck for right now. That way I don't give up what town it's in. But I need to do some prep work for a tree stand there. I can go up. I'm going to end up having to put the stand probably 25 feet in the air to get where I need to get. It's a foolproof access to get in and out. And there's a good tree that I can hunt with 2 different wind directions and be okay. But I want to go ahead and put a set of climbing sticks up against that tree and then get up in it. I won't leave the tree stand. I probably won't. I'll get it all prepped as quick as it is to hang those Novik stands. I don't want the tree stand out in the weather. So I'll put the climbing sticks up and get it up there, get the stand set where I know it'll lock on and be level where I want it, and trim my lane. I think I got 1 tree branch that I need to cut. I can. That project I'll do one evening after work. I got to go to Indianapolis, I believe, on Tuesday and Wednesday for a sponsor summit with Penske Racing. So I'll be in work mode those 2 days. But then next week, tomorrow, and then late next week I'll probably be helping my friend Patrick Simpson work ground for his food plot. So still a lot of food plot work to get ready for here.
Yep.
All the moldboard plower haters will have some content to complain about over the next couple of weeks.
Well, if you just look at what the ag farmers are doing in your region, you're going to see the best method right there.
Yeah,
if it's rolling and crimping and they're not doing it, there's a reason they're not doing it. If they're using a moldboard plow, there's a reason they're using it. So
yeah, you drive down the road and every single ridge top is plowed right now. So like I said, people, you gotta learn and adapt to the conditions. I would never go into our hunting properties in Illinois and do what we do here, and I wouldn't do what we do here. So but anyway, great episode. I really look forward to this segment next week on those 4 properties that you were on this week. I hope people will make a point to tune into that. And then also, please share the Lester's Feet raffle, and let's drive this thing as big as we can make it. Outside of that, I don't have anything.
I'm all wrapped up too, Terry. So God bless everyone. See you next week.
Take care.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by Osseo Camo, Via Farm Real Estate Company, 360 Hunting Blinds, Victory Chevrolet, Real World Wildlife Products, Matthews Archery, Novix Tree Stands, Gingerich Tree Farm, WildlifeFarming.com, Quiet Cat, and Vortex Optics. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.